Everybody, we're back here on a new topic. We're going to be talking about resignation versus termination and F5 appeals. I have Bob Gorsky from Lyon, Gorsky and Gilbert in Dallas, who's been in the law enforcement business as an attorney for 30, going on 39 years. 39 years. So we'll kind of dive in. I get a lot of questions about I'm being forced right now to make the decision. I have to resign or I'm going to be terminated right now. And I get a lot of phone calls of, well, I resigned, I want to appeal now my resignation. And people asking, what are the ramifications of each option? I'd like just to visit briefly about those.
Well, the most important thing is if you're called into your chief's office and given the choice to resign or be terminated, do everything you can to buy some time so that you can call either your labor representative or TMPA, one of the attorneys, to get some advice on how it should be handled. If you resign and then you decide that wasn't a good move and you want to appeal, invariably you're going to be cut off from any type of an appeal. And you're also, if you've got any legal issues that you think you can raise in any type of a lawsuit, your resignation in almost all cases is going to kill that lawsuit.
We get asked sometimes about, well, if the allegation was there of a criminal charge, or should I try and broker my own resignation? And one thing that it seems like I hear a lot is if you're pressed where you can't contact legal representation and you're forced into brokering your own right then and there, as I try and encourage people, have something in writing. Because invariably if your boss says, oh, I'm going to give you a raving review and a honorable F5, and I get a lot of phone calls a few days later that, well, I just got my dishonorable. And would you agree, would it help to get it in writing?
Very important. And the things that need to be considered is anytime an officer separates, there's going to be an F5 issued. It's going to be sent to T-Cole by the department head. You may not know it, but if you don't have some understanding and agreement that it's going to be an honorable discharge, your chief may do a general or even a dishonorable discharge. Particularly if you're resigning because there's some type of investigation that's been pending against you, that alone is going to call for a general discharge or a dishonorable unless your chief agrees to basically close the investigation and issue an honorable. So you need to understand, and you need to have an understanding with the chief as to what that F5 is going to look like, or any other terms of your resignation. And having some type of paper trail, your chief may not want to sit down with you and write out a settlement agreement, but even an email confirming, chief, this is what we agreed to, and if there's any disputes or disagreements, please let's talk it out and resolve it. That way you've got some kind of paper trail later.
Okay. And if they choose to write it out and force the termination, talk about the F5, they have so many days to file their appeal.
Well, the chief has, and sometimes they don't follow this, but they've got 7 days to send you the F5. So within 30 days of your receipt of the F5, you have the ability to appeal to T-Cole, and they send it over to the State Office of Administrative Hearings called SOA, and you have the opportunity to have an administrative law judge hear your appeal. So if you get an F5 under any circumstance, whether it's a resignation or termination, whatever it might be, if you get one that you don't agree with, so if you get a general or a dishonorable and you don't agree with it for any reason, you need to consult with TMPA, consult with counsel about the possibility of appealing the F5. At the F5 hearing eventually, and it's conducted somewhat informal, but it's by an administrative law judge in a conference room like we're in today. The burden of proof, though, is on the department to prove the dishonorable or the general. If the department comes in and thinks you got to prove that it should be an honorable or it should be a general, and they don't present a case, you win. They've got the burden to prove the F5. So watch your timing. If you don't receive it within a week or so, you should inquire of the department. But once you receive it, your 30-day window begins to run to file an appeal.
Okay. And one more thing I get asked about is, hey, I'm going to separate from my department for any number of reasons in a positive manner. I've got a great opportunity at a bigger department or whatever. and I get a phone call a few days later, there was no IA, they truly left for a better opportunity or whatever, and they get a general F5. To get the general, does there have to be some underlying facts? Does there have to be something for a department to not give an honorable if someone truly leaves under good
Yes,
circumstances?
the only circumstances for a general is if you're leaving under some type of administrative investigation of misconduct or inappropriate behavior. Simple as that.
In lieu of, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, you're resigning, or if you're separated, you could be terminated by any separation, but it could be a termination or it could be a resignation. So if you've got an IA pending over any type of allegation, it's going to be at least a general, unless the chief just chooses to give you an honorable, but typically it's going to be a general if you resign or if you're fired for a misconduct allegation. But if the allegation is criminal in nature, so if you've resigned in lieu of some type of criminal investigation, whether the criminal investigation has been disposed of or not, then the F5 form calls for a dishonorable. If you resign because of an allegation or during an investigation of an allegation for insubordination or making an untruthful statement, it's going to be a dishonorable. So basically those three categories essentially call for a dishonorable discharge: criminal, insubordination, or untruthfulness of some sort. Okay? That's either you resign during it or the chief terminates you for that. But again, you can contest that if you believe, wait a minute, I wasn't untruthful, I wasn't involved in criminal behavior. You can contest that by filing your appeal and attempting to get it changed to an honorable.
And to touch on something before we close, early on you mentioned if you get that phone call, get to the sheriff's department right now to meet with the sheriff, or get to the police department to meet with the chief right now. Pause and call someone, get on the phone, and that hits on another great quick question. Is guys will say, well, can I just go in there and tell them I'm not talking until my lawyer gets here, or I'm not talking until I can get a rep here? I guess it kind of leads into Weingartner a little bit, but a lot of guys think they have the right, and outside maybe a city directive or an agreement with that department, if they're ordered to sit down right now. Can you hit on that?
Well, short of any department policy that would require the chief to give you a representative or give you a certain amount of time, he doesn't have to allow that. So the importance of talking to someone there's a couple of reasons. Number one, might help you talk it through and try to figure out your strategy. The second thing is you'd be surprised how many times the TMPA attorneys and sometimes the TMPA field reps know the chief of police or the sheriff or a chief deputy or an assistant chief, where we can get on the phone and say, hey, we got a call from this guy. What's the problem? Can we get a few days? Can we talk it out? Can we figure out a way to work this out?
Yes, sir.
And that happens a lot. I've had that experience. So, don't assume that just because you've gotten that phone call that something can't happen. We can't do something, or TMPA can't do something to try to help you work your way through it. We may not be able to save your job, but we may be able to help you in an exit strategy that works best.
Sure. Excellent. I'd like to have you back on again. We'll hit some topics. I'm sure some folks will reach out for some other topics maybe they want covered. But I appreciate everything you do for law enforcement all over the state of Texas. And thank you for doing this.
We love being a part of it. Thank you. Happy to do it.
We will get this pushed out. And next up, I'm going to have Dave Anderson talking about some leadership in law enforcement. Thanks, guys.